Welcome to today's Edulastic 101 training. My name is Jan Moody and I am excited to be here today and excited to be your host. I'm joined by a few of my colleagues as well. Ileana Betancourt is on the call, as well as my colleague John Chen. Ileana will be helping to answer questions in the chat and also in the Q&A bubble. And then John Chen will be giving the heart of today's presentation and walking you through a free teacher account in Edulastic. So welcome, thanks for joining us. I'll give just a quick introduction before passing it off to my colleague John. All right, so before I pass it off to John, just a few housekeeping things to go over. The first is you all are testing out the chat right now, it looks like, but you do have access to the chat throughout the duration of this webinar. If everybody could please type into the chat where they're tuning in from, and then also, do you have a teaching resolution? And if so, let us know in the chat as well. So I'll start, I am tuning in from California. I see a lot of different people, New Jersey, or I saw Hawaii, Illinois, Detroit, Ohio, Philadelphia, Tucson, Orange County, New Jersey, North Carolina. Wow, amazing. New Mexico, all over the place. Thank you everybody for being here today. That's really awesome. So please use the chat throughout the duration of this webinar to connect with one another and chat throughout the webinar. If you have an official question, we ask that you please type that into the Q&A bubble. At the bottom of your screen, you should see that little Q&A bubble, and this helps us, myself and Ileana and John, keep track of your questions so that we can either type a response back to you or verbally answer those questions during our designated Q&A time at the end of this webinar. So chat is for discussion and fun conversation, whereas if you have an official question, please type that into the Q&A bubble, and we will type an answer back to you or get to it during our designated Q&A time. So here's today's plan. This is our short little introduction piece, and then I'm going to pass things off to John in just a moment here. And John's going to go over just about everything that you need to know about a free teacher account in Edulastic. He's going to go over how to create a free teacher account starting from the edulastic.com website, how to create and administer your first test or assignment in Edulastic, what it looks like when you take a test from a student's perspective so that you are able to assist your students and make sure that you're understanding what they see on their end. He's also going to go over performance and how to view the different results in Edulastic. And then lastly, at the end, I'm going to give you some further resources and some other places where you can get more information or additional support if needed. At the end, we are going to have a designated Q&A time. So the presentation will last around 40 minutes, and then our Q&A time at the end will last for around 20 minutes. So ask any questions you may have. We'll get to them throughout, or we'll answer them verbally at the end. All right, John, go ahead and unmute yourself and turn your video on.
Hi, folks. How's everyone doing today? Hope everyone is well. Happy New Year, first and foremost. And I just want to thank everyone for taking the time today to attend our one-on-one session training. It's just great that, given this, the beginning of the year rush and everyone's competing interests, it's great that you took the time to attend today's meeting. And I'm looking at the chat. It looks like there's a lot of fast and furious chats coming along. So, please feel free to chime in when there's any questions, as Jen mentioned. And let's get started. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen with folks. And for folks on the line, whether this is your first foray into Edulastic or you already dabbled in Edulastic, creating some assessments, I'm hoping that today's session you're going to find some kind of interest in what we're going to show today. So the first thing I want to show folks is how to create a teacher account. Most of you on the line probably have already created a teacher account, but if you haven't, let me go and show you quickly how to go about creating your first teacher account. So what you want to do is click on the yellow button in the upper right corner where it says join for free. And I'm assuming that for the most part, folks on the line today are teachers, but there's also an option for admins to create accounts as well. What you want to do next is click on the sign up button in the upper right corner. Click on the I'm a teacher option. And then this will take us to a sign up page. Now, there's a couple things to note on this page is that you can either create an account manually by entering a teacher name, email, and a password, but the preferred method is to use the options up above. So if you're coming from a school or district where your email is tied to a Google email, I do recommend that you sign up with Google. That way, in the future, when you're logging into Edulastic, it's a one-stop shop type of deal. You know, it's a single sign-on. You can just simply click on that button and then get logged in directly into Edulastic. So if your email domain at school or you know, at work is a Google account, I do recommend that you sign up with Google using that email. Alternatively, you can also sign up with Office 365. And then lastly, we have an option to sign up with Clever. So Clever is a tool that we use to link up with your SIS, your Student Information System on Edulastic. But for today's purposes, I'll go ahead and just sign up with a teacher account manually. So I'll go ahead and enter in some details down below. And while I'm doing this, if any folks on the line already have their teacher accounts created, feel free to log into that account. You can either follow along and I'll show you what to do next. And then when you're ready, sign up as teacher. And this will then take you into your account. So there's a couple of things to note on this initial homepage when you're first logged into your teacher account. The most important thing is that we'll show you some tutorial videos on how to get started using Edulastic. So you'll see here that right off the bat, you'll be able to play a video that gives you a brief Edulastic overview of what Edulastic is. And I'll just quickly summarize that we're a formative assessment platform that allows teachers to create things like, you know, either benchmarks, summative assessments, formative assessments, interim assessments, things of that nature. But also things like exit tickets, quizzes, you know, end of year tests, any of those things that you can use to assess your students' progress throughout the year. And we do that by using standards. So when you're using Edulastic, keep in mind that all questions are tied to standards. We follow both Common Core standards and also state-specific standards. So if you're in a state like New Jersey, for instance, that doesn't use Common Core, we also have those preloaded into the systems for you to choose from as you're creating assessments. So I'll go ahead and X this out. And then the next thing you'll see is a variety of different videos once again. So we have an overview of Edulastic, and then we have these things called featured content bundles. So what these are vetted pre-built assessments that you can use on Edulastic. You know, when you're using Edulastic, you can of course build your own assessments from scratch. But if you're pressed for time or you just want a more of a time savings option, we have these content bundles where you can find, you know, we have math, science, ELA, and social studies, which we consider our big four subjects, but also things like Engage NY and Smart Start diagnostics tests for both math and ELA. So these are also available when you first start in Edulastic. So let me go ahead and just quickly jump into a teacher account that's already been pre-built with classes. So as you can see here is that when I first log in Edulastic, I want to create classes. And these can be, let's say you're a teacher, a high school teacher that teaches 4 periods throughout the day, or you know, you're a grammar school teacher that teaches you know, two or three periods. What each card that you see in front of you represents is a unique class with a unique set of kids and assessments. So you'll see here that my teacher account now has 2 classes. One is called Social Studies, and one is called 7th grade math. So, and one has 6 kids and the other one has 16 kids. So just, you know, when you're first creating your classes in Edulastic, just remember that each card represents a unique class that you teach throughout the day.
Hey, John, can I interrupt you for a second?
Of course, please, Jan.
David had a good question. He says, what if our Edulastic account is tied to Carnegie Learning? Does that change how you get logged in or any of that stuff, what you've been going over right now?
Yes, actually, I will save that until the end. But David, yes. So in Carnegie Learning, you'll be directly logging into the CLI platform. CLI is a Carnegie Learning platform.
Great, thanks, John.
Yep, sure. Any other pressing questions, Jan, on your end?
I think that's good for right now. We're keeping note and we'll get to them throughout.
Okay, great. So the next thing you'll notice on the dashboard is that you'll see a variety of different icons on the left here, on this left strip. Now, the dashboard is where you'll land when you first log into your account, but there's other tabs as well called Assignments, Insights, which is our reporting tool. There is the Item Bank, Test tab, and then manage class. So let me go to manage class first, because this is where some of the most important things when you're first starting off happen. So once again, manage class is where your classes reside. Now, for those that use Google Classroom, we have a really nice integration with Google Classroom where you can just quickly sync with your Google Classroom. And what that does is that when you click on this button up above, that will bring all your Google Classroom classes directly imported into Edulastic. So think of it as a one-stop shop, one-stop click, whatever, what have you. Once you click that, all your classes from Classroom will then be brought into Edulastic in one fell swoop. So it's a really nice and tidy way to bring those classes over. Now, of course, if you don't use Classroom, you can always create those classes by simply clicking on the create button, create class button. You can go ahead and enter some details, whatever the class name is. Let's say Mrs. Smith's class, period 1 math, for instance. We can designate what grade and subject you teach. So let's say we're grade 4 math. I like to use that as an example. And for illustrative purposes, let's just say that we use Math Common Core in this class. So this allows us to not only pick the grade and subject pairing, but also the standard sets that we use. And remember, once again, any state-specific standards are in the system, preloaded. If you're not seeing any standards that you're looking for, we can always load those into the platform for you. So just send us an email at support@edulastic.com and we can get those loaded into the system. You'll see here that there's Alabama standards, Arizona, New Jersey, Colorado, whatever the case may be. You can find them in the drop-down menu. Now, having done this, we can then save the class. I won't go ahead and save it because I already have some other classes loaded, but go ahead and save the class, and then that will be your first class created on Edulastic. So as a refresher, just remember that you can either sync with Google Classroom, or you can create a class from scratch just by using the create class. Now, having created our first class, what we can now do is we can create an assessment. So that's probably the meat and potatoes of Edulastic. As a teacher, I most probably am interested in how to create assessments on Edulastic. Now, there's 2 different ways to create an Edulastic assessment. You can either pick from our item bank. So think of the item bank as a repository of loose items that have been created by other users within Edulastic. So if I click on item bank, I'll then see tens of thousands of, I believe as of last count, there's over 50,000 items in Edulastic in all the different subject areas. And you'll soon learn that the filters on the left will be your best friend. This will allow you to better whittle down the list from really expansive into more specific, whatever your needs are. Let's say you're an ELA 4th grade teacher or a 7th grade math teacher. You can use the filters to then find exactly what you're looking for. The filters are indicated by this little triangle, upside down triangle right here. And using the filters, you can filter for whatever grade subject pairing you're looking for, as well as if you're looking for specific standards or question types. We also have options for you to pick DOK levels, difficulty, and then tags. Tags are things that you use to tag questions with to help you better, more easily find those questions. So you'll see here that I filter for grade 3 ELA, and then about 3,300 questions then populate on the right side. You'll see here that if I change the filters to something else, let's say grade 4 math, then the relevant number of questions then populate on the right side. And using this item bank method here, what you can do now is you can review all the questions that come up and then determine whether these meet your needs. And if they do, you can simply add them to your assessment by clicking on the plus button right here. So the view button is to view as a student, and I'll show you what that looks like momentarily. But this will be the preview mode for what the kids see on their end. And once again, if you like it, you can then simply click on the plus button to add it to your assessment. Now that's one way to add items to an assessment. Now another way to create assessments is just to go down the pre-built route in Edulastic. Now if you click on the test tab here on the left, you'll see here that Edulastic, we have once again, a repository of pre-built assessments. These have already been created by either other users in Edulastic. We also have in-house content developers that create these assessments, but we also link to third-party things like Engage NY, Smart Snart. These are things that the aforementioned assessments on your dashboard here. And then these pre-built assessments can then be assigned to your kids. So let's say, for instance, we reviewed the TEI assessment right here. We previewed it, and we liked it, for the most part. We can then go ahead and just push it out directly to our kids by assigning it. Now, before I create an assessment from scratch, I did want to just quickly shift gears now and show you what the student perspective looks like. So the student perspective, this is, as educators and teachers, you're probably wondering what kids see on their end when they're taking Edulastic assessments. Let me go ahead and go into one of the student accounts here. So this one account, you'll see here that the kids dashboard is definitely more streamlined. Teachers will see, there were 6 or 7 icons on the left. Kids will only see 3. Their assignments list, their grades, how they did on previous assessments, and then their classes. What classes are they enrolled in? Now, when they first log in, all their active assignments will then, obviously reside on this assignments tab. And what I can do as a kid is I can click on the Start Assignment button on the right. They'll be given a really quick synopsis of, when the due date on any particular assessment is. In this case, this one is due January the 13th. And they'll see a little status down below, whether it's not started, in progress, or completed on their end. So as a kid, what I can do is I can click on Start here. And this will take me directly into the assessment. Now, do note that if you're pushing this assessment out through Google Classroom, this will be the same view that you'll get. Kids can log into Classroom and then take the Edulastic assessment directly from that portal. So as a student, I'll go and just enter. And the great thing about Edulastic is that we have a variety of different question types. So whether you you do any type of state standardized tests like MCAS, AIR, STAR, SBAC, or PARC, all those question types that you would find on those state standardized tests will then be reflected in Edulastic as well. So for instance, this first one is a multiple choice. This one is drag and drop. So just drag the shape into the shapes that have 4 sides. So I can drag this into this one. Next question is a text dropdown. So you'll see here that you'll be able to select, and I'm just guessing on some of the questions. So invariably, I'll get some of these wrong, of course, but you can then click on next. This one is classification. So you can move things up, move things down in order to classify the answer in the correct sequence. This one is passage-based, so students are meant to read a passage on the left and then answer any accompanying questions on the right here. Same idea right here, another passage-based question. Now, I did want to go through some of the tools that kids can have, can interact with as you're taking these Edulastic assessments. There's a way for kids, we call this the cross-out option. This little X here, think of it also as answer eliminator. So kids can visually, strike things out on their end so that they can just eliminate that from contention as they're answering questions. If they know for certain that A and B is not in contention, they can use that as a tool. This tool called Scratchpad, this is a great tool that this is one of our bread and butter. What kids can do is when they click on Scratchpad is that they can annotate notes directly in Edulastic. So using the freehand draw tool, they can, show their work. In this instance, I'll just write that. They can use the text tool to write things out. They can use the math equation tool to interact with math symbols and the like. And then they can use all these shapes and math tools as well. in their answers. So think of the Scratchpad as a way for teachers to see the students' work, and probably more relevant for math questions as opposed to other subject areas. But if it's important for teachers to see the kids' work, how they got, came about to an answer, kids can always use Scratchpad to show their work. You'll see here that I can use the keypad that comes up. And then some additional tools, magnifying glass. This helps those needing visual accommodations, that they can enlarge the font if they wanted to. And then the last question is, also very popular question type is essay questions. Now, keep in mind that essay questions, these open-ended constructed response questions, are the only ones that need to be manually graded by the teacher. Everything else in Edulastic is auto-graded. The drag and drops, the multiple choice, multiple selections. The only one that needs to be manually graded are open-ended essay questions by the teacher. So, I can write something like San Jose, I like tennis, and I enjoy ELA class, for instance. And then I can go ahead and when I'm done, I can submit the assessment. And this screen will be a way station for kids to be able to either review anything that they've skipped. Our system will indicate whether they've skipped any questions, either inadvertently or on purpose. And they can always go back to those skip questions and fill it out before they do a final submission on the test. So when the kid is ready, they can simply click on submit. And you'll see here that they'll get a synopsis of how they did. So this color key, is pretty apparent. Red is correct. Sorry, not apparent to me, obviously. Red is incorrect. Green is correct. Yellow is partially correct. And then blue are those open-ended questions that teachers need to manually score. And gray is skipped. And this green line, weaving in and out indicates the time spent on task. So you can see here that question number 6, this kid spent about 110 seconds on, versus the other questions where they really breezed past. And then they'll get the score up on the bottom there. So this kid scored 1.33 out of 7. Now, what's great about Edulastic is that the kids can then review their responses. So if they click on this review response button down below, this will not only show them what they marked as their answer, but the correct answer in the system. So once again, X is incorrect, and then green check mark means that's the correct answer. Now, of course, there's a way to hide that from kids. So if you don't want kids, for instance, to see their scores and all the correct answers and things when they click submit, there's a way for teachers to lock down that visibility. And I'll show you that momentarily back on the teacher account. So Jan, I'll go ahead and pause briefly here. Any really good questions that come up during this session about the student view?
One thing that might be good to clarify is what other student accommodation tools are there while students are taking a test? I know you kind of went over this, but we had a few questions come in.
Yes, so that's pretty much it for the free versions. So, our one-on-one session today will cover the free versions. There are a couple of other accommodations, but those are in the premium versions. And, if you're interested, you can always go into your account and see what those are.
Great, thanks, John. And those include like text-to-speech and a few other cool things as well.
Yes, text-to-speech. We also have a ability for teachers to shuffle questions on their end. Think of it as an anti-cheating mechanism. But those are in the premium version of things. But for today, we're just focusing on the free.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. So that does bring one question up to mind, is that teachers, you should note that when kids are taking these assessments, our system continually saves the answers for them. So there's no fear in losing work. For instance, if they get booted off due to internet connectivity issue, or the power goes down and they lose their connection. When they get back on Edulastic, they'll be taken to where they last left off. So there's no fear in losing work on Edulastic. We continuously save that work for them. So let me jump back into the teacher account now and show you the data. So once again, this is another big component of Edulastic, is that once your kids start taking these assessments, you as a teacher, of course, want to see the data behind all the assessments and how they're doing, how they're faring on the test. So where that can be found is the assessments tab right here. And let me go into one of the tests that I know that, one of our classes did really well in terms of the data being populated. So this test called October Math Test, if I click on the live class board, this will then take me into the class itself. So if you've already seen this, it's a very, really colorful, view. Once again, the color key stays the same: green correct, red incorrect, yellow partially correct. And then each of the cards down below represents one kid in the class. So as teachers, you'll be able to see how each of my kids did. Each of these little hash marks is a question on the test. So, right off the bat, I can see that Jen, Guy, and Lori did, they aced the test 100%, whereas some of the other kids struggled a little bit, Jay and Chris, for instance. And there's two ways to look at the data. So up in the bar chart up above, you can see where kids are really excelling in or they're struggling. So I can tell for the most part that kids found questions 2, 3, and maybe 7 and 8 pretty easy. They struggle with question number 5 and 6. There's more, red colored into the bar chart. Then once again, this dotted line weaving in and out represents time spent on the questions. So on average, I can see as a teacher that my kids spent longer time on questions number 4 and 8, for instance. And the bar chart is interactive. So if I want to click into question number 1 and see how all the kids are doing, I can simply click on the bar chart. And then this will take me into each of those kids' responses. So as a teacher, I can slowly scroll down. And then, really just go one by one. That were my intent, to look at all the kids' responses and how they did. Now, this is also a place where I can then manually grade those open-ended constructed response questions. So I will be able to see all the kids' essay responses and then give the pertinent number of points on the right here. So I can enter 1 here, 0.5. You can give any incremental values. It doesn't have to be full points. It can be 0.25, 0.33, whatever the case may be. Teachers can insert the points there in that box. They can also give student feedback. So you can, let's say you read a student's essay response and you want to give them some feedback on that essay response. You can say something like, "Good job," and then save it. And then that feedback will then be shown to the kids once they log back into their accounts. So back in the kids' account, they can always see the feedback that teachers have left them. Go ahead and pause briefly here. Any questions, Jan, on your end?
No, I think Ileana and I are typing lots of answers back, but yeah, just keep going through it. Thanks, John.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so that is the, let me just quickly go back into the live class board. Once again, just a quick summary is that you can either look at the questions in aggregate by the bar chart up on top, or you can then see each individual student's response down below. And if you wanted to just, see, let's say, for instance, this Jay Allen's response, I can simply click on View Responses, and that will then isolate only Jay's responses down below. So remember that the bar chart will give you every student's response, but each individual student's card will obviously then only focus on that particular kid in the class. And then a couple other things to make note of here is that back in the live class board, there's features called print, redirect, and more. Print, is if you want to print a hard copy of the test. It's probably not so relevant nowadays now that kids are remote. They'll probably for the most part be taking these tests online. But redirect is a very popular feature here. What redirect does is that it allows for a retake of the test. So this can be important for kids that were absent the first time around. Let's say that you gave a test and the kid didn't get to it in time. They were ill or they were out for whatever reason. what you do is you can click on redirect. Let's say I want to redirect it to Jay here. Check his box next to his name, click redirect, and that will send it back to him for another attempt. So think of redirect as a way to just, give, for whatever reason, whether you want to just, sort of drill concepts into kids' heads, you can always redirect it to any kid, whether they've already taken it or not. And then the more option is, you can always download grades into a CSV file. You can download the responses into a CSV file. And just make note of this is on an individual assessment level. So this assessment called 7th grade math period 1, you can always download the grades and the responses for it in a CSV file.
And hey, John, I'm just going to interrupt you for a moment there. Sarah and Maritza both asked in the Q&A bubble, how would you reopen an assessment? This redirect feature is how you would do that. So hopefully that answers your guys' questions.
Yeah, so, once again, just click on, so let's say I want to send the test back for more practice to these 3 particular kids. Just check the box next to their names, click on redirect, and you'll see here that there'll be a pop-up that allows you to then input a new close date. So the new close date is due date. So whatever the new due date is, you can go ahead and input that. We have a little calendar feature here, and then redirect. It'll send it back to them for another attempt. You'll see here that back on the teacher live class board, you'll see a little redirect status down below. So if no further questions, I did want to get into the assessment creation portion. So, once again, this is probably where you'll spend the bulk of your time as teachers. How do I create assessments on Edulastic? Once again, we can either do the items or we can create questions from scratch. So for the most part, what you want to do is you want to go into the test tab, click on new test, and you'll see a variety of options, either create from scratch or create from PDF. So the PDF is a great option if you already have an assessment that you generated on a PDF. What it does is you can upload it into the system, and then this will turn it into a digital copy of an assessment directly in Edulastic. This is not as popular as create from scratch. I'll just say that for a little bit later. But by far the most popular way to create an assessment is from scratch. So we'll go and do that by clicking on create test. The first thing you'll be asked to do is to create your test name. So let's call this, let's say, Wednesday test, for instance. And then the next thing we'll be asked to do is to add items to the test. And once again, you can create items by using the item bank or create items from scratch using your own. So let's say I want to create my own item. And you'll see here that what this then brings up is a whole slew of different question types, multiple choice, fill in the blanks, writing, passage, highlight, math, graphing, so on and so forth. And once again, by far the most popular one is multiple choice. What I can do is I can simply click on that, and then this allows me to then pick one of the question types. Let's go ahead and pick multiple choice. And I can say something like, which state borders the Atlantic, for instance. And just keep in mind is that as you're creating questions, you're also creating the answer key as well. So we need you as teachers to be able to create the answer key as well. So we'll pick, let's say, Florida, Arizona, let's say Texas, and Oregon, for instance. So then we need to key in the correct answer. In this case, it's A, and then give the applicable number of points. By default, everything is assigned 1 point. You can always up that to more than 1 point if needed. What's great about Edulastic is that you can also jazz up the questions by adding things like pictures. You can bold, italicize, underline things. You can add videos. Let's say, for instance, you want kids to watch a Khan Academy video before they answer a question, for instance. You can always add videos from an outside source, YouTube videos, Khan Academy videos. You can, increase font size for those that need a visual accommodation. You can add math symbols. And I just want to go ahead and add an insert an image, what that looks like. So what it does is it asks me to upload an image from my computer. And what you do is you can simply click on Edulastic. This is one of our group pictures from our team, but whatever it is on your computer, you can simply add that to Edulastic, and then sort of make your question a little bit more interactive. And when you're ready, simply go ahead and click save. And then that question then gets saved into the system. So any questions from folks today on the line about, how do I create an assessment? What I can do as a teacher is I can mix and match. I can pick both those items from the item bank and add my own. So there's that flexibility in mix and matching both of those question types.
Hey, John, one thing to touch on would be the different points that you allot to questions. We've had a few different questions come in about that.
Sure, yeah. So once again, the default is always 1 point for question types, whether it's essay, multiple choice, drag and drop. But we understand that essay questions are probably a little bit more high stakes normally. So you can easily assign 10 points to essay question and then keep the other ones 1 point. But as teachers, you have the flexibility to make any question worth any applicable number of points that you see fit.
Thank you. And then Chrissy just asked a great question too. She says, are the questions that you create added to the item bank?
Yes, great question. Yes. So the questions are added to the item bank, but do note that by default, they're added as private to your own bank. So you won't be splashing that to everyone using Edulastic. By default, it will be made private, but you can always publish your assessment to the public view and then have those questions that you make join the bigger Edulastic community.
Great. Thanks, John.
Yeah.
And then I just want to remind everybody, we do have a lot of questions coming in through the chat. If you could please type your questions in the Q&A bubble, that will really help us make sure that we get to them all. Thanks, everyone.
Yep. And actually, that last question did bring up a really great, so I did want to follow up on that one. So the questions that you add in Edulastic that you create yourself, you can always add them to different libraries. So we have 4 different libraries in Edulastic. Let me show you that. So on this share icon right here, you can give access to everyone, district, school, or individuals. Everyone would be anyone using Edulastic, the greater Edulastic community. District will be only the district that you teach at, whether let's say LAUSD, Chicago Public Schools, or New York Geographic Schools. It will be everyone in the district. School will be only your school site. You'll give access to your fellow colleagues at the school site that you teach at. And then specific individuals are just one-off people that you want to give access to for that Edulastic assessment. You can always copy links as well. So once you create a test, what you can do is you can simply copy this link and then send it to maybe an LMS, or you can simply email one of your fellow colleagues saying that, here's my test URL, feel free to share this with others. Now, let's say we've created an assessment. I'll just go ahead and grab one randomly from, excuse me, the test tab. What I can do now is I can simply click on Assign. And then this will then bring up a screen where I can pick the class that I want to assign it to, the kids that I want to assign it to, and then the testing window. So the class group section right here are those classes that I've created in my account. So I have 2 classes in this account. I can assign it to both or just simply one here. By default, all kids will then get the assessment that you push out. But if you only want to select a select few kids, you can simply click on the boxes next to their names like this. And then the testing window. This is pretty important. When do I want to make the test available for kids to start? And then, when is pencils down? When is the due date for the test? Once again, the calendar will pop up for each of these options. You can simply click on the time and the date itself. And then the open policy. If it's automatic, right when that open date hits is when kids will be able to start on the assessment. You can always open it manually as well yourself. So if you don't want kids to get a head start on the test for whatever reason, you can always open it manually, let's say 5 minutes before the class starts, if it's a high stakes test. And then the test type, there's 2 types. There's a class assessment and there's a practice assessment. Class assessments always get a score and get graded. Practice assessments do not figure into a score or into your grade book. So, if it's something that you just want kids to practice on and not necessarily get a score on, you can simply click on practice. And then release scores. So this goes back to that student view that I showed you earlier. if you don't necessarily want to give kids, their scores or their answers back immediately, you can simply click on do not release scores or responses. This is really, a good tool to have. Let's say you teach 4 different classes throughout the day and you don't want kids in the morning classes to share the answers they've seen with the afternoon kids. You can do not release, you can click on this option and that will then lock them out effectively from their scores or responses. Keep in mind that you can always come back to this toggle and release it when the time comes that you see fit. And then evaluation method. This is more appropriate for, actually this is only applicable for those multiple selection problems, the ones that you're asked to choose, pick 3 out of the 5 answer choices. There's an option that you can either do all or nothing or partial credit for those multiple selection problems. And then when you're ready to push out the test, you've picked out which classes, which kids, and the testing window. You can simply click on assign, and you'll see here that this test will then get pushed out to the kids in the class with the success message here. And then from here, kids can obviously work on the test. And then back in the assignments tab, you as teachers can then see that real life result trickle in as kids are taking it. So if I click on the live class board, right now, obviously no kids have started that test, but I can always have real-time insight into how kids do. These little tick marks will always get populated in real time as kids are taking it. So it's a really nice visibility into how kids are doing, as they go along.
Hey, John, one question that just came in was, how would you assign a special needs student a different version of a test? And I think you just covered this a little bit, but when you're assigning it, you can assign to specific students and then go back and redo it in the free account and assign to other students.
Yes, that's right. So, those classes with maybe SPED classes or any other class, what you can do as a teacher is that you can create a different version of a test and make it a little bit, easier. For instance, giving them 2 answer choices instead of 4, for instance, or just, making the vocabulary a little bit more easy. And that way, if you have 2 versions of a test, let's say 1 version for my regular kids and 1 version for the SPED kids, what I could then do is then assign it directly to those kids in the class. So, I can always have all the kids in one class, but when it comes time to assign the assessment, I can then isolate, version 1 will only go to regular kids and version 2 will then only go to the SPED kids by picking and choosing which kids on the test. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. And then, in terms of other data to be had in Edulastic, obviously the live class board is where you'll probably spend the vast majority of your time. There's also a tab called Insights. Now, Insights are Edulastic reports. Now, there's a whole, slew of different reports that are available. Most of these are premium, but there is one report that is free for teachers, and that's the one called Standards Gradebook. So just remember, as you're creating assessments, everything in Edulastic is standards-based. We're trying to assess mastery on standards for all these different assessments. So if you click on this and the filters, this will then populate the standards gradebook, and then you'll be able to see performance on how kids are doing throughout the school year. This is cumulative, for example, and then you'll be able to see how kids are doing on all the standards that you have given as a teacher throughout the course of the school year. And this can be printed out. And also additional filters if you want to compare by students, by class, and by some of the demographic data, free and reduced lunch, ELL, IEP, race, gender. These are all available in Edulastic as well. So I did want to definitely save some room for Q&A at the end. It looks like we're about 15 minutes to the top of the hour. I think this is probably a good time to segue into Q&A, Jan. What do you think?
Yeah, that sounds great. If you want to keep sharing your screen, I think that would make the most sense right now. Yeah. The first thing that would be great for you to touch on is different sharing levels in the library, and then also Edulastic certified questions. So head over to the test bank.
Yes, so let me go into test bank. So you'll see here that the test bank. So I did want to make note of one other thing that's that teachers use a lot in Edulastic. So let's say, for instance, in the pre-built assessments, you find a really good assessment, but for the most part, but you want to tweak it slightly. What you can do is you can make a clone of it. So think of clone as duplicating an assessment. So I can, maybe strike out one or two questions, or I can slightly edit it, or I can, make some kind of change to the assessment. I can clone it, continue to clone, and that creates a copy of that test. And then from there, what I can do is I can go back into the questions themselves, and I can resequence. For instance, I can drag things up, drag things down. I can outright delete. Let's say I like that assessment. If I want to eliminate questions 1, 2, and 3, for instance, I can eliminate those. And then, of course, I can also add new questions to the test as well. So cloning is a great option is if you want to make a duplicate copy of an assessment and then tweak it slightly, make edits as you see fit. But going back to the publishing that Jan mentioned earlier, is that once you create an assessment, you can publish it to one of 4 different libraries once again. So if I click on the edit button, the little pencil icon to the right here, once again, I can publish it either to the district, meaning that anyone else in my district can then see the assessment, school library, anyone else in my particular site, individuals, only anyone that I give permission to. I simply enter their emails. Let's say, for instance, let's say there's an Albert in the that person will then be able to, you'll be able to share with that person, or you can use the link above to copy the list. So once again, 4 sharing levels: everyone, district, school, and individuals. So think of it as least restrictive to most restrictive, which is individuals. And then what those folks do is, let's say you shared an assessment to the public library. What anyone else using Edulastic can then do is go into the test tab, go into the filter where it says entire library, and then find it here. They can either do a keyword search, or they can use the filters down below to find that assessment. So I think it's called TEI, for instance, right here. So you'll see here that depending on who you shared it with, you'll then be able to find it as that user in Edulastic.
Awesome. Thank you, John. Ruth asked a really good question. She said she's using the link sharing method. So she assigns a test and then copies that link to give it to her students. Where can she then find that link afterwards, after she leaves that success page?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Great question there. So Ruth and any others, if you already built assessments, what you can do is you can go to the test tab and then click on the author by me. So these are any tests that you yourself have created in Edulastic. If you go to the author by me under filters, you can then find those assessments that you've built. So simply click on the title of it, click on details, and then once again, the share link button, this one right here, the little 3 dots, and copy it from here.
Great. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Moving away from the test library, more towards adding students in the first place. At the beginning of the webinar, we had some questions about Canvas versus Clever versus Google Classroom. Do you mind speaking just a little bit about all of those different options that are available?
Yes, definitely. So, by far, I mentioned before that Google Classroom is by far the most popular option to make your rosters and to create classes within Edulastic. We also do support other things as well. Having said that, Canvas is one, Schoology is another one, and ClassLink is another one. So these happen at the district level. So if you're interested in syncing with Schoology, ClassLink, or Canvas, for instance, you'll need to loop in one of your district personnel with Edulastic, and then we can get that ball rolling on our back end. But once again, just go ahead and just send an email to support@Edulastic with that district contacts names, and we can always reach out and get the process going to sync with other platforms as well within Edulastic.
Great, thank you. And I'll type that support email in the chat. But once again, that was support@edulastic.com. And then John, while we're on this page, we had a couple questions come in about how you would remove a student that's no longer in your class.
Yes, that's a great question. So there's a couple of different ways. If you're syncing with Google Classroom, for instance, every time a new kid enters your class or one leaves, what you need to do is you need to do a resync with Google Classroom. So let's say student A left today. What I would do as a teacher is I would come back in and then sync with Google Classroom again, and then all those updated rosters would then get populated right when you do that. So remember that this is not a automated system. This needs to be manually clicked on by the teacher, him or herself, every time a student either comes in or leaves the classroom. And then another way is that you can always go into the list of kids. Let's say you manually entered these kids by yourself. What you can do is you can simply click on, let's say Jay left the class today, he's no longer in the district. Click on his name and then remove the kid from the class.
Great, thanks, John. Earlier, we also had a question about how you would rename a class, if that's possible. So maybe show what kind of edits you can make to a class.
Yes, absolutely, great question. So once again, that can be found in these 3 vertical dots in the upper right corner. So go into the class, and let's say you want to rename the 7th grade math period 1. Click on that, click edit class, and then you can make your edits, whatever accordingly. You can change the grade subject pairing. You can add a grade level, for instance. You can, the subject is only, you're locked into 1, but you can always do multiple grade levels. You can also add new standards if you wanted to. If you no longer, if your state suddenly switched to, let's say, New Jersey state learning standards, you can always find those in the system instead. And then when you're ready, you can simply click on Update Class.
Great, thank you, John. A couple other questions about deleting and unassigning assessments. Can you show us how to do both of those things?
Yes, yeah. So deleting is pretty simple. So let's say you're creating an assessment, you have it saved, and you just want to scratch it. You didn't quite meet your needs. What you do is you go into the test tab right here. Once again, authored by me right here where I'm hovering. Click on into the title of the assessment, and then simply click delete. And that will then purge this assessment from the system. And there'll be, so obviously we will pop up a confirmation, because think of this as once you delete it, it's gone forever. So we just want to make sure that folks don't accidentally delete something that they really vitally need. So once you click on delete, then it'll get scrubbed pretty much. And Jan, sorry, what was the deleting, and then was it
unassigning?
Unassigning, yep. Okay, so let's say we pushed out an assessment and we want to get, we want to take that back. We don't want to give it out to the class anymore. What we can do is we can simply go into the assignments tab right here. Under actions, what we can do is we can, let's see, hold on 1 second. Sorry, okay, you want to go into the class that you assigned it to first, so the live class board. And then under the 3 dots in the upper right corner, click on Unassign All Kids. That will then effectively remove the assessment. So watch when I remove this. Go ahead and click Unassign. Yes, Unassign. And that class will no longer show up on the assignments screen.
Great, thanks for showing that, John. A couple other questions. Do you mind showing again how a teacher would give feedback?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me go back into the live class board. So let's say, for instance, this class right here, feedback. Let's say we just want to hone in on one kid in particular. So let's say we want to get feedback for this Ryan kid right here. You would click on View Responses. And there's a place that you can either give overall feedback, so overall for the assessment as a whole, or on individual questions themselves. So you can either write something here. So remember, if I leave student feedback in this area and save it, it only will give feedback for question number 1. Question number 2 is a whole different story. I can leave another type of feedback here. But also I can leave overall feedback. So if I click on overall feedback here, I can, say something different here. And those will always be shown to the kid when they log back into their accounts.
Awesome. And then while you're on this page, somebody was asking earlier where we would see Scratchpad work. I'm not sure if this assessment has any Scratchpad work, but this screen on the live class board is where you would see student work in the Scratchpad.
Yeah, that's correct, Jan. So I don't believe this assessment has any open-ended questions, but this is where you would see it. So, where I'm hovering this whole area would be that open-ended, constructed response type that the kids have typed out. And then you can, simply look at that response and then give the relevant number of points based on, what you deem to be what they should get based on the response.
Great, thank you. And then back to the feedback piece of things. So you as the teacher just gave Ryan a bunch of great feedback. How would Ryan access that feedback?
Yep, so let's see. Hopefully I'm in Ryan's account. Let me just check this out here. Okay, let me just see. So this was given on the, sorry, there's a little bit of a toggling back and forth here. So this was given on the high school math assessment. So what I can do is Ryan, is I can click on resume. So you'll see here that the high school math, the second one right here, I can click on resume. And actually the feedback will not show up until he submits. So let me just do a quick submission here. Okay, there we go. So we'll go ahead and submit it as Ryan. And then, yep. So then back in his account, when he clicks on, remember, so this excellent feedback that we gave on the overall assessment, and then for the individual questions, he can then click on review responses, and then see that response that you gave, the good job, and then I think the other one was great or something like that. So this one here, yep, right here. So once again, the Ryan would go back into his old assessments by clicking grades, click on high school math, review, and then look at the feedback down below.
Great, thank you, John. If it's okay with you, I'm going to take over screen sharing to just go over a few more things before we reach the end of our hour here.
Absolutely.
All righty. Are you able to see my screen, John?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and start my video too at the end here. Perfect. Okay. So I wanted to point out a couple of follow-up resources that are available to all of you. We've had lots of great questions come in through the chat and through the Q&A, and there are a lot of different places that you can go to get answers to those questions if they weren't answered during today's webinar. So the first is our resource page, and I have that open right here. This is also called our Teacher Training Hub. There are lots of good resources on here. This is a different Edulastic 101 webinar. If you're interested in Teacher Premium, here's a pre-recorded Teacher Premium webinar. We also have several different self-paced training courses, lots of other good stuff. Teacher Training Kit, our Quick Start Guide, and our YouTube channel is actually what I wanted to show you next. So over here is our Edulastic YouTube channel, and we have videos to walk you through lots of the stuff that we went through today. So I'd recommend checking out our Quick Start Guide. This kind of gets you up and running in about 20 minutes. We also have, one moment here, clicking over to playlists, this administrator playlist tutorial videos, and then Edulastic 2020 tutorial videos has a ton of helpful walkthroughs that will help answer a lot of your questions as well. Things like syncing with Google Classroom and how do I redirect, lots of those stuff are answered on our YouTube channel. So check this out, I highly recommend it. Alrighty, let me go ahead and present this. Alrighty, a couple other questions that were asked earlier was, are there any other trainings coming down the pipeline? The answer is yes. We actually have a Teacher Premium training tomorrow at 2 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern time. And if you are interested in another Edulastic 101 training, oops, that's supposed to say 101, there is another one next week. This webinar has been recorded and we will be sharing that out with all of you as well. We have several other webinars coming down the pipeline at the end of January and into February as well. And you can access all of those in our live trainings and in our webinars pages. So hopefully Ileana can share those in the chat. And I know we've went over lots of different questions. If you have other questions, feel free to ask them in the Q&A right now. We'll try and get to as many as we can. And lastly, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us. And thank you, John, for this great presentation. We really appreciate everybody being here and are wishing everybody the best this semester and this school year.